When the fire alarm went off in the skyscraper, everyone saw him as just an obstacle, just an old elevator technician, moving too slowly. But when he single-handedly began evacuating that 40-story building, everyone froze in shock. Because that man had spent 30 years fighting New York's most dangerous fires as a decorated fire captain. Welcome to Human Stories. Before we begin this incredible story of hidden heroism, emergency leadership, and forgotten courage, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this need to be remembered, hit that subscribe button and help us honor these silent guardians. Captain Michael Mick O'Sullivan had been fixing elevators in Manhattan's Meridian Tower for 3 years now, and most days nobody noticed him at all. At 64 years old, with silver hair and reading glasses perched on his nose, he moved through the gleaming lobby carrying his toolkit like any other maintenance worker in the city. The 40-story glass tower housed law firms, tech companies, and financial consultants. Everyone moved fast, talked fast, and barely acknowledged the guy in coveralls who kept their elevators running. To them, he was just the elevator guy, slow, methodical, and invisible. What none of them knew was that Michael O'Sullivan had spent 30 years with the New York City Fire Department, rising from probationary firefighter to captain of Engine Company 21 in Midtown Manhattan. He'd responded to the worst fires the city had ever seen, saved hundreds of lives, and earned commendations that filled 2 shadow boxes at home. But that was then. Now he was just Mick, the guy who fixed stuck elevators and cleaned grease from cables. It was 2:47 p.m. on a Wednesday when everything changed. Mick was on the 15th floor performing routine maintenance on elevator bank C when his trained ears picked up something that made his blood run cold. A subtle electrical humming that didn't belong, followed by the faint smell of burning insulation. He immediately stopped his work and followed his nose toward the building's central utility shaft. The smell was getting stronger. After 3 decades of fighting fires, he knew exactly what he was smelling: the beginning of an electrical fire in a confined space. Mick pulled out his phone and dialed building security. "This is O'Sullivan in maintenance. I need you to check the electrical panels on floors 35 through 40. I'm getting indicators of a possible electrical issue." The voice on the other end was dismissive. "Mick, we're kind of busy down here. Can you just file a work order like everyone else?" "Listen to me carefully," Mick said, his voice taking on an authority that hadn't been there moments before. "I need someone to check those panels now. This isn't about a broken elevator." "Dude, calm down. You're not the fire department." Actually, Mick thought to himself, I was, for 30 years. He hung up and decided to investigate himself. Taking the freight elevator to the 38th floor, he followed the smell to a utility room that housed electrical distribution panels for the upper floors. What he found confirmed his worst fears. One of the main electrical panels was overheating, with visible scorch marks around several breakers. Worse, the panel was located next to stacks of paper files and cleaning supplies. Perfect fuel for a rapidly spreading fire. Mick immediately called building security again. "This is O'Sullivan. You need to evacuate floors 35 through 40 right now and call FDNY. You have an active electrical fire hazard." "Mick, you're overreacting. Maybe you should stick to fixing elevators." That's when the lights flickered, and Mick heard the sound that every firefighter dreads: the pop and crackle of electrical components failing under extreme heat. Flames erupted from the panel. Mick didn't hesitate. 30 years of training kicked in like muscle memory. He grabbed a CO2 extinguisher from the hallway and attacked the base of the fire, buying precious time while he called 911 directly. 911, this is Captain Michael O'Sullivan, FDNY, retired. I have an active electrical fire at Meridian Tower, 425 Park Avenue, 38th floor utility room. Fire is spreading to combustible materials. I need engine and truck companies immediately. As he fought the initial flames, the building's fire alarm finally activated. But Mick knew something that everyone else in the building didn't. Electrical fires in high-rise buildings can spread through utility shafts faster than elevators can evacuate people. He had maybe 10 minutes before this became catastrophic. Mick ran to the stairwell and began his way down, checking each floor. What he saw made his heart sink. Office workers were ignoring the alarm, assuming it was another drill. Security guards were slowly walking the floors, casually telling people they probably should head toward the exits. Nobody understood the urgency. On the 35th floor, Mick found a group of lawyers in a conference room continuing their meeting despite the alarm. "You need to leave this building right now," he told them, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of someone who had commanded emergency scenes. One of the lawyers, a man in an expensive suit, looked annoyed. "Who are you? We're in the middle of an important meeting." "I'm the guy telling you that there's a fire spreading through this building's electrical systems, and you have maybe 5 minutes to get out safely." "You're just the elevator maintenance guy," another lawyer said dismissively. "Security told us this was probably a false alarm." Mick pulled out his wallet and extracted something he rarely showed anymore: his retired FDNY Captain's badge. "Captain Michael O'Sullivan," he said firmly, 30 years with the Fire Department of New York, Engine Company 21, and I'm telling you that if you don't leave this building right now, some of you might not leave at all." The room went silent. "That fire started on 38, and it's moving through the utility shafts. The building's sprinkler system won't stop an electrical fire, and FDNY response time to the 35th floor is going to be at least 12 minutes. You have 2 minutes to get to that stairwell." The authority in his voice, combined with the badge, finally broke through their complacency. The lawyers began gathering their things. "Leave everything," Mick commanded. "Move now." As the lawyers filed out, Mick continued down the building, floor by floor, using his knowledge of high-rise fire behavior to prioritize evacuations. He knew which floors were in immediate danger and which ones had more time. On the 32nd floor, he found a tech startup where half the employees were wearing headphones, oblivious to the alarm. "Everyone out!" he shouted, moving through the office with the quick efficiency of someone who had done this hundreds of times before. "This is not a drill. Fire on the upper floors, spreading fast." A young woman at a computer looked up annoyed. "Excuse me, who are you to come in here yelling?" "FDNY Captain, retired," Mick said, not slowing down. "And if you want to argue about my authority, you can do it from the street. Move." His tone brooked no argument. The entire office began evacuating. By the time Mick reached the 28th floor, he could smell smoke in the stairwell. The fire was spreading exactly as he'd predicted, moving through the building's systems faster than a traditional fire. On the 25th floor, he encountered his biggest challenge yet: a group of executives who had barricaded themselves in a conference room, convinced that staying put was safer than using the stairs. "We're not leaving," said a woman who appeared to be in charge. "Security told us to shelter in place until the fire department gets here." Mick looked at her seriously. "Ma'am, I am the fire department, retired but trained, and sheltering in place during an electrical fire in a high-rise is exactly how people die." "You're lying," another executive said. "You're just the maintenance guy. We've seen you fixing elevators." That's when Mick did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He pulled out his phone and called a number he knew by heart. "Engine 21, this is former Captain O'Sullivan." "Is Lieutenant Rodriguez available?" A moment later, "Mick? What's going on?" "Rodriguez, I'm at Meridian Tower with an electrical fire spreading through utility shafts. I've got civilians refusing to evacuate. Can you confirm my credentials for them?" He handed the phone to the lead executive. This is Lieutenant Rodriguez, FDNY. The man talking to you is Captain Michael O'Sullivan, one of the most decorated officers in department history. If he tells you to evacuate, you evacuate. Period. The executive's face went pale as she handed the phone back. "How long do we have?" she asked quietly. "If we leave right now, plenty of time," Mick said. "If we stand here arguing, maybe none." The group finally moved. As Mick continued his floor-by-floor evacuation, he could hear FDNY sirens getting closer. But he also knew that the first trucks would need time to assess, connect to building systems, and establish command. Every person he got out now was someone the arriving firefighters wouldn't have to rescue later. On the 20th floor, he encountered building security finally taking the evacuation seriously. The head of security, a man named James Parker, who had been dismissive on the phone earlier, approached him. "You're O'Sullivan, right? The elevator guy?" "Captain O'Sullivan," Mick corrected firmly. "And yes, I also fix elevators." Parker looked confused. "Wait, you said Captain? FDNY, 30 years, Engine 21, Ladder 9, Battalion 7. Responded to over 2,000 structure fires, including the Midtown Plaza fire in '98 and the Hudson Terminal incident in 2003. Parker's mouth fell open. "You're that O'Sullivan?" "Captain Mick O'Sullivan." "I am." "Jesus, why didn't you ever say anything?" "Wasn't relevant to fixing elevators," Mick replied. "But it's relevant now. How many people are still in the building?" "Maybe 60, spread across floors 15 through 30. "Get them out, all of them. The fire's going to reach the 20th floor within 10 minutes. As if on cue, the lights flickered again, and smoke began seeping into the stairwell from the upper floors. Parker got on his radio with new urgency. "All units, this is Parker. Full building evacuation, all floors. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." By the time FDNY arrived, Mick had personally evacuated over 200 people from the upper floors. He met the incoming battalion chief at the command post being established in the lobby. "Chief Morrison," Mick said, approaching the command area. Chief Morrison looked up from his tactical worksheet and did a double-take. "Mick O'Sullivan? What the hell are you doing here?" "I work here, Chief. Elevator maintenance. I spotted the fire in its early stages and started evacuation procedures." Morrison shook his head in amazement. "Should have known. Only you would find the fire before our alarm systems did." "Electrical fire, 38th floor utility room, spreading through the building's conduit system," Mick reported with the precision of someone briefing incident command. "I've evacuated floors 28 through 40, some civilians still on lower floors, but they're moving. Fire's got about a 10-minute head start, but it's contained to the utility areas for now." "Thank you, Captain," Morrison said, using Mick's former rank out of respect. "Want to stick around and consult?" Mick looked up at the building he'd been working in for 3 years, now with smoke visible from several upper-floor windows. "Actually, Chief, I think I'll let you handle it from here. You've got good people." As FDNY crews deployed into the building, Mick walked to where the evacuated office workers were gathering across the street. Many of them were looking at him with new understanding. The group of lawyers from the 35th floor approached him. "Captain O'Sullivan," the lead lawyer said, the dismissive tone completely gone from his voice. "We owe you an apology, and probably our lives." "Just doing what needed to be done," Mick replied. The tech startup employees from the 32nd floor had formed their own group nearby. The young woman who had questioned his authority earlier walked over. "I looked you up on my phone," she said quietly. "Captain Michael O'Sullivan, FDNY, Medal of Valor, 2 unit citations, Department recognition for the Hudson Terminal rescue." Mick nodded once. That was a long time ago. "Not that long," she said. "Thank you." Over the next hour, as FDNY brought the fire under control, word spread through the crowd of evacuated workers. The quiet maintenance man who fixed their elevators was Captain Mick O'Sullivan, a legendary firefighter who had saved hundreds of lives during his career. James Parker, the security chief, found Mick as the all-clear was being given. "Captain, I have to ask, why didn't you ever mention your background? You could have had a consulting position, better pay, respect." Mick smiled for the first time that day. "I had respect, Parker, for 30 years. What I needed after retirement was purpose, keeping people safe in a different way." "But fixing elevators?" "Elevators are life safety systems in high-rise buildings," Mick explained. "When they work properly, people can evacuate efficiently. When they don't?" He gestured toward the building. "Well, today you saw what happens when someone who understands building systems spots a problem early." 3 weeks later, Meridian Tower reopened after repairs. Mick returned to his elevator maintenance duties, but everything was different now. Office workers stopped to chat with him. Parents brought their children to meet the real hero who saved all those people. The building management had offered him a promotion to chief safety officer, but he declined. "I like fixing elevators," he told the building manager, "and now, when I tell people about fire safety, they listen." The lawyers from the 35th floor had established a small memorial plaque in the lobby. "In appreciation of Captain Michael O'Sullivan, FDNY, retired, whose vigilance and expertise prevented tragedy on March 15, 2024. Mick saw it every day on his way to work, but he never stopped to read it. He had elevators to maintain. Conclusion: some heroes wear uniforms and receive recognition for their service. Others hang up their uniforms and find new ways to serve, asking for nothing more than the opportunity to keep people safe. Captain Michael O'Sullivan never needed anyone to know about his 30 years with FDNY. He wasn't looking for respect or recognition in his retirement job. He was simply doing what he'd always done, using his knowledge and experience to protect others.
The badge in his wallet wasn't there for show. It was a reminder that once you dedicate your life to saving others, that dedication doesn't end when you retire. It just finds new expressions. Real heroes don't stop being heroes when they change jobs. They just find different ways to serve. Have you ever met someone like Captain O'Sullivan? Someone whose background surprised you when it mattered most? Share their story in the comments below. And if stories like this remind you that everyday heroes work among us, subscribe to Human Stories. We're here to honor the quiet guardians who keep us safe. See you in the next story.